I don't know how Rahman-sir knew it, but he just messaged me and saying, can you please tell Mr. Roots that Joe Fred has mission gun effect. But the problem was I didn't actually tell him that, and he actually emailed me a week later saying, Navneeth Sundar, I asked you to tell him this, why didn't you tell him? Illayaraja-sir, he said, so he told me that don't keep playing the same thing. Actually what the original was, it has to be played using a sostenitive pedal on this particular note. Because, on a classical guitar, use a keyboard.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Indoencers Podcast. Our guest is somebody that would be instantly recognizable for followers of South Indian music. You may know him as the music director of films such as Pattampuchi and Buddy, or you may know him as the composer of songs like Sinduberuvidillana and Theeramara, or perhaps you know him as the pioneer of the iPad Carnatic movement, or maybe even as somebody who has performed on stage alongside legends like AR Rahman-sir and Illayaraja-sir. Regardless of how you may know of him amidst the various musical hats he dons, it should be clear that we have a true musical genius with us today. I'm super honored to welcome our guest today, Navneeth Sundar. Alright, so getting into things straight off, what I like to do on this podcast is start from the beginning and kind of trace your journey until where you are today and kind of explore the various experiences that you've had along the way. So starting from the very beginning, I've heard that your musical journey started at the age of 3 with a very special toy keyboard. Would you consider that to be your first musical memory?
Actually, yes, I would think so. Because I remember playing the toy and listening to jingles on television and using concept which I later got to know as Grahabedam of Carnatic music to just to just play the different scales. So when you look at the white keys on the keyboard, you start from a different root note, you get a different raga. So I'll just play. If it's on Karara Priya, I will start from the second note and I'll just play it. But I didn't know what it was, but I guess I was in line, I was in tune in some way, yeah.
Something that really stuck out to me when you were talking about your toy keyboard in another interview was the fact that, as you just mentioned, your toy keyboard only had the white notes, and you were able to recognize the fact that the black notes were missing, the sharp and the flat notes were missing. So do you think you were able to recognize this because you heard other songs and you noticed, that song has an F sharp, but there's no F sharp on the keyboard? Was it like that, or was it that the gaps between the notes were inconsistent?
I think it's more the gaps between the notes because I was kind of able to hum this. What is C? I think this is C. This is C. So this chromatic scale, I knew that da should follow this, but if that wasn't coming, then if I heard na, then I would know there is na, there's something missing in between. So it was just by ear. I mean, I as I told you, I was in tune somehow. So I could know what a half step would sound like. Although I couldn't describe it well, but I know that's okay. This is na. That's a bigger interval. That's a wider interval. And I recognize that there is something in between that's not there.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something I've never heard any other musician I've had on or just anybody else talk about, being able to recognize the chromatic scale in that way at such a young age. So that's, particularly incredible. A lot of the guests that come on, they have what I call prodigy moments. So, I had Aditya Prakash on a couple of episodes ago, and, he was able to recognize ragams at the age of 4 or something, incredible like that. So I think we can add you onto that list of musical prodigies.
I didn't know any names or any of these raga names because I wasn't exactly born into a musical family, so I didn't have anyone at home telling me this is Karagara Priya, this is Kannada, stuff like that. In fact, no one even told me what a sa, re 1, re 2, etc. is. So, but I just had this gift of being in tune. I think that's all I had, and I just built upon it, built every foundation upon it. That's all.
Yeah, and you just mentioned your family, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit because your family does have a little bit of a musical background, if I'm correct. It was your grandfather that I believe taught you the harmonium when you were 6 years old, and I believe your mother was a stage singer and performed in live shows. So, yeah, what sort of influence did your family have on your musical upbringing?
Actually, I was very young, so I remember my mom singing on stage. I never quite remember my grandfather playing a lot on harmonium because he passed away when I was like what 8. So I didn't. He didn't live long enough after I was born. So all that I remember him telling me was, I saw two notes similar, identical, C and C, and I tried to press them together but I couldn't do the bellows and this at the same time, and he would just bellow for me and I'll just play them together. I couldn't reach them and he told me, you have to aim to reach that. So that's that's the kind of lesson I remember. That's the thing I remember him telling me. Other than that, there were too much of an musical interactions with my granddad. Of course, there are other memories. Like as a grandfather, I have like those grandfather-grandson relationship. But regarding music, all that I remember is the harmonium which is sitting right there in my, which he used to play on. That's the only thing I remember, and it's the precious thing is still sitting in my studio. And regarding my mom used to sing. Yes, in fact, I recorded a lullaby, one of my lullabies in her voice as well, Kurandai Tunga. So she sang that initially in 2006. So that was, but she wasn't very focused on music because she had to bring me up. I was like, it's not easy bringing me up, so I must admit that. So basically, whenever before I started playing in orchestras and stuff like that, or at least in my earlier years in orchestras, until that point she used to infrequently sing. We lived in a small town, Tuticorin, so that wasn't exactly it's not known for its musical frequencies, let's say frequency of music works happening, let's put it that way. So there, whatever opportunity she got, she used to just sing. We lived in a township called Spiknagar. Tak was a company where my dad worked, so it was in a small colony. So within the township, whatever musicians they gathered, those gatherings, wherever those orchestras used to come and play, she will be invited to sing a few songs. So that was how she used to sing. She learned music as a child, yes, but other than that, I was never in that zone of accompanying her. Like, we didn't have musical interactions per se at home. That was not my upbringing. So I was more into academics, physics, math. That was what they thought I would end up becoming. So music was the last thing on the discussion anyway at home.
Yeah, and you brought up your inclination towards, physics and math and subjects like that. And that actually intersected really well with your musical upbringing as well, in the way in which your teacher chose to teach you. And I believe it was Mr. Selvaraj who taught you in your early days. And I heard that he kind of approached music teaching from a kind of science or math-based perspective. So how was it learning from maybe a sort of more unconventional point of view? Did you feel like it lined up with your strengths better?
Rather than say that he taught me from science or math perspective, he made me learn in my own way, in my own understanding, the way, because he figured, because I didn't attend even a single formal class in his classroom, because I was fidgety, I was naughty, like a typical 6-year-old at that point. So he figured it's better that he teaches me at home. So he had a class in one small room where kids used to come and learn from him. And till the end of his life, he passed away in a year ago because of COVID. But till the end of his life, he just dedicated his life into teaching kids. So he was very passionate about teaching kids. He will just give all of himself to just teaching them. So he was into that. So he loved the fact that I was very curious and very keen, and I had a very different thought within me. So he came home. I just got a small Casio by then, yellow color SA01, SA1 I think. So so he basically taught me in a way where I figured out the notation. So he figured out how much I knew at that point and built from there. So he taught me the notations and he showed me this is the black keys, these are the notes that you knew were missing, but these are there. So now you have the full palette. And now he let me figure out the combinations myself, how many ragas are possible. And he told me how the raga structures are aligned. And then I came up with how this should have been, this is the right way to go about how the so it's in groups of 6. So Ma 1 is the first 36, Ma 2 is the second 36. So this kind of stuff. So basically it's about that number 72, right? So how the combinations that, so rather than sitting and singing sa re re, this was the basis from where I built my foundation, where typically a 6-year-old won't get to build on from, right? So this was where I started. So it was all built on the foundation of math. It was built on the foundation of the fact that there are 72 possible combinations of the 3 re's, 3 gas, if you can put it that way. So if you put them all together, this adds up to 72. Rather multiplies and adds up to 72.
Right.
Yeah. So based on this and okay, how are janyas structured and these were my first lessons. So it's just that the order of in which you learn stuff is kind of altered, because I've never learned a single varnam in my life. I don't think I even learned Janda Varsa. He only taught me till Sarali Varsa. He taught me how to go under the finger, and he taught me how to go over. And then he declared that I was fit enough to play for an orchestra, and we just moved over there. And then everything else was on the job.
And speaking of your orchestra, I heard that you started playing in an orchestra called Geetams. That was your music teacher's band?
Yes, he was the one conducting it, yes.
Yeah, and you started playing in that band with adults at the age of 9, if I'm correct, which is quite incredible.
Yeah, around 9. Must be around 9. Yeah, I was probably approaching 9, somewhere 8 something.
Even younger, my gosh.
I think I was in my 4th standard. Yeah, 4th standard.
I see. Yeah, that's incredible, because usually, at least with my musical upbringing, for example, I've only played and sung with people my age. So if I was in 4th grade, I'd sing and play with other 9-year-olds, I wasn't on stage playing with 30 and 40 and 50-year-olds, right? So it must have been quite the experience for you, playing with adults with lots of experience. So what did it kind of take away from your time there? What do you think you learned?
It would be hard for me to describe what I learned, because I don't think I don't think I had the maturity or the understanding of what was going around. It was all getting imprinted. So you don't understand the fact, you don't get the fact that you are getting rewired. Your brain gets rewired at that age. You can't describe it, but it's happening. But something is happening. You get up wiser every day. Just that the process gets accelerated when you play in such an orchestra. So I learned how to sequence like small bits and stuff like that, and how sequences. They had a PSR 510. I remember Yamaha PSR 510 keyboard. So which had a step sequencer. So I saw the step sequencer. And I figured, okay, these are divisions. There are 96 divisions. So if I have to program a quintuplet, so I have to divide 96 by 5, and that leads me to a very leads me to quotient remainder stuff. So so I'll just do the math and I'll just split it accordingly. So if I had to do a quintuplet, I'll do 18, 19. I'll just split it up accordingly. So I'll run numbers like that. So that's how I ended up doing sequencing songs. So if I tak it, so 1, 2. So I had to. So these were the things that I figured. So Selvaraj Kumar uncle was very, very kind to leave that keyboard in my house whenever there were no gigs. So the fact was that I didn't have a great keyboard at that time. I had a PSS 390, which was a synthesizer, but which had no other features. It just had an on-off button and some numbers, dials, and it had a one synthesis knob. So it's an FM synthesis, the name of which I didn't know at that point, but that was what it was. But anyway, he was kind enough to leave that PSR 510 in my home for extended periods of time, so that I can just play with it and figure out what instruments are, how songs are arranged, what a string. So under strings category, I would see violin, viola, cello, double bass, and I know, okay, there is some order to it, and I'll just look at these sounds and figure what's happening. There was no internet. I think this was probably 95, 96. So I had access to nothing. So this was how I learned the sequencing and all those techniques, just by living with that keyboard.
Interesting. So do you think you're because with many children, like when it comes to music, we have no discipline, right? There's no sense of consistent practice or anything like that. So do you think you kind of had that very strong inner curiosity which led you to kind of develop that discipline naturally? Like, were you experimenting with things on a consistent basis?
Yeah, I was very curious. I wasn't very chatty, but I was very in fact, I remember going up to some people, it's not out of arrogance, but I would just go up to people and tell them they're out of tune on stage. So I was that it was more out of innocence. I remember actually telling one musician, sorry uncle if I offended you that day. I had no clue what I was doing, but I think as a 9-year-old or 10-year-old, I walked up to him once. He finished singing a song. We came back and I told him, uncle, you're really out of key. You have to go do some practice and come back. So that was who I was. So I was always the only thing, more than curiosity, I was also very observant of what was happening. So I was taking a lot of. So if someone was off key, I recognized it, and I will just. And then I'll wait for. Those days I didn't wait for my turn to tell them. I'll just go and tell them straight. These days I'm a little better, I think. But the innate observing tendency was there in me. So the fact that whenever I saw something, I would like to take in as much information from it naturally. And I think it is this process that has led me to maybe when I when I came out of Thoothukudi in 2000, I think I was whatever I was at that point. I think this innate observation, the trait to observe things, was probably what made me become what I was in 2000 for a new start in Chennai.
Yeah, and speaking of your kind of observant qualities when it came to music, I heard that a lot of the songs that you listened to were songs that were composed by, music directors, film music directors such as, Rahman-sir, Raja-sir, MSV-sir, etc., etc. And you said something really interesting that really intrigued me in terms of how that influences your compositional process. Because, you've said that nowadays you make up situations to compose music to, because you've kind of programmed yourself to the idea of making music to situations, because you've been brought up with film music. You've said that even when you work on indie music, you kind of make up situations in your mind, right, when you compose. So with those kind of situations, would you say it's situations that you've taken from your personal life, or just completely made up situations?
See, I live in a world where unicorns exist and pink elephants write poems. So, situations don't. It's not about. I'm just saying this because I live in a very fantasy world. That's what, at least that's what my wife used to tell me. You just live in your own fantasy world. But the thing is, I like to just imagine something, emotions. I don't understand people that well, I must admit that. But it's based on from my vision of what the response to a certain event to a certain life event would be for a specific kind of an individual. From my experience, so I thought, okay, if this happens to this person, this is how he's going to react, and this is how he's going to respond, and this is what would run in his head, and this will cause him to do this. These are just completely random thoughts that occur in my head, and not necessarily about myself. So most of these are not concerned about me at all. So I never put me in that equation. So I'm never existed. So these are not life events. So these are just random events. For example, I wrote a song called Kathirukkum Vinadigal that is based on, in Tamil they'll say Ponnu Paaka Pora situation, which means the groom goes and visits, he wants to see the girl he's going to marry in a typical village setting, and in Tamil there is a phrase where they say Vazhimel Vizhi Vaithu Kaathirundal, which means the girl kept looking out of the window, staring at the road right in front of her, waiting for the groom's party to arrive, and she'll just sit there, and at one point their eyes catch, so they see each other. So this guy notices that she's hiding behind, she's too shy and she doesn't want to show her face, and she recognizes the fact that this guy is very well built and he looks like a hero, like the hero of the guy of my dreams, and he's going to come and hold my hand. So the entire song is about that, the journey from this point, from point A to point B. And these are just made up situations. Obviously, if it's probably 300 meters, I don't think a 5-minute song would fit in that duration, but it's just pure imagination, right? So I just like to create these situations for myself, and I just write these songs.
Was this kind of imaginative and creative side of you something that you had from your early days as well, or was that something that developed as time went on?
I probably had it in my early days as well, but I don't think I channeled it for writing songs. I probably did it for other stuff. For example, I can give you an example where my teacher actually told me I was very creative. So this was, I think, I don't know when it was in school, in 1995, if I'm right, or in a computer center, either of these two places. I remember attending a small computer course for QBasic at that point. So we just had DOS commands and stuff like that. There's no Windows 95. Windows 95 was yet to come out. They were having, so it was that time. So I remember the Windows wasn't out. Windows 3.1 was there. But I remember the first program I wrote in BASIC at that point was to convert this keyboard here into a musical keyboard. Yeah, I think I was 95. I would have been 11. Yeah, I would have been 11. I was in my 6th standard. I think I was in vacation from 5th going on to the 6th standard. That it was that vacation actually. I think it was in a computer center. Yeah. So what I did was I didn't know the frequency of C. I hadn't read any books there, but I kind of figured that since C to C sharp has the same relationship from C sharp to D, I just made up that I calculated that it must be 12th root of 2. So all I had to do was just encode 12th root of 2 in the computer, assign a random frequency. I think I gave some 250 or some hertz to one of these notes, one of these keys, and multiplied each note by 12th root of 2 and arrived at all the 12 notes. And then I remember calling all the students there and playing different songs on that keyboard. So that was my first the program I wrote for me. So probably I had this side to me as a child where I would do something different from the others. So at that time, I remember that teacher at that coaching institute telling me that I was slightly different from the others, and I was very creative. So probably that side did exist. But as I grew up, see, when I channeled this to writing code at that point, maybe the same energy channeled it towards writing songs as well. So I think the mechanism, the infrastructure that generates this behavior is the same, just that they're channeled towards different dimensions.
Wow. I'm mind blown. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. And you just mentioned school, and that's not something we've touched on too much. We've talked about your experiences with your music teacher and the band that you were in with him. But were there any bands or groups or even classes that were music related at school that you think helped you in your musical upbringing?
There was occasionally we would have a school assembly, and we will have some music teachers occasionally coming and training us. So I wasn't exactly a singer, but I can hold notes well. So often enough I will get invited to just render something, and more often than not, it would come to the point where the teacher would have written. She would have, in a lot of these assembly songs, the teacher would have written some lyrics, and she would have written swarams accompanying that. And more often than not, I would just read the thing straight, because I know, okay, sa maps to this syllable, and just map it out and just sing it off. So often enough, I would end up just reading it and telling the other students what these notations are. So this made their task also easier. So I did get invited like this, just informally, just to teach. Okay, Navneeth, just teach these boys what these notations. She'll sing it once, and then she'll ask me to teach the other kids, and I'll just do it. We'll be ready in like 20-25 minutes. So that way we did some small stuff. And every year, I think from my 7th or 8th standard, we used to have an instrumental competition, which I think I won pretty much every year. Instrumental music, where I just play the keyboard. So yeah, so we just had some small stuff happening in school. And of course, Selvaraj Kumar uncle, he would get we played in this children's orchestra, where when I was in my 4th standard, the other kids were in 7th, 8th, like slightly older kids would be there. So we are still school kids, right? We would do some stuff in school. So those things were there. So not very frequent, not like gigging, not like regular programs, but just fun here and there. That's all.
I see. And yeah, we talked about school, now kind of going up the educational ladder. Once it came to college, I'm aware that you really kind of got into the live scene. And that kind of led to you playing for legendary musicians such as Raja-sir and Rahman-sir. And I want to zoom in on your experience with Raja-sir a little bit, because, I was hearing things that I found really fascinating. And while preparing for, I believe it was the How to Name It show, where you played his legendary album, I heard that Raja-sir kind of took you aside and guided you through some of his intentions for the songs. And, he taught you how to play specific songs. So what sort of things specifically was he talking about? What sort of things did he point out? And, what were some of the learnings that you took away from those times with him?
First of all, those are some of the best memories in my life, in my musical journey, I must say, because more than whatever you achieve, or the so-called achievements in your life that you get, right? I think these little moments where you get glimpses of real legends you have looked up to all your life, getting to know them and getting inside their minds, getting to know a little bit of their mind is probably the biggest blessings that I think musicians can really receive in their life, because that can really propel you to think more like them, like at least aspire to think like them, how they did their stuff. So in this particular case, I think Illayaraja-sir, he heard me play this one small bit in Composer's Breath. It goes of course, the whole piece is based on Graha Bhedam, starts with Hindolam, goes to Panturali, is a lot of stuff. There's one small Chakravaham change in between, and a lot of stuff there. So I don't exactly remember the melody. Apologies for that. But this is basically what I played, something like this, where alternating between octaves on my left and right. So it goes like this. So it goes on like that. So he told me how to pedal this, because he told me that I was pedaling it differently because he had written it for the classical guitar. But he told me since he couldn't find a classical guitarist on that particular day for session, he asked I think Vijay sir to play it. I'm not sure if Vijay sir played it or somebody else played it. But I think he told me Vijay. I don't remember the name. But he said this was played on keys, but the intent behind this was to replicate the classical guitar. So what you have to do is you have to also use he showed me the piano. So he said, so he told me that don't keep playing the same thing. Actually, what the original was, it has to be played using a sostenuto pedal on this particular note, because On a classical guitar, you use a capo to hold it on the B string. You use a capo to put it on C sharp to bring it up to C sharp, and then you play the other notes on the higher strings, and you keep striking the C sharp.
Right.
But then, since it was shifted to the keyboard, then this whole octave thing came. This became this, and it became like that. So the intention is you have to keep ringing the C sharp. That's what he told me.
Like a pedal point.
Yeah, and when the chord until the chord changes, keep holding the pedal. Keep holding the sustain pedal, because you're playing it on a synthesizer. You don't get to use sostenuto pedal on a synthesizer. So keep holding the pedal. Don't play like a keyboard. Of course, when you're on a keyboard, you tend to take out, like when you play chords, you lift my pedal and put it back, right? So that tendency of mine comes in when I'm playing, because sometimes I fear I'm run out of polyphony or stuff like that. But he said there are only these many notes. You will not run out of polyphony here, because when you hit the note again, you're going to hitting the same note. It's the same sample that gets played again. You don't have to be bothered about that. So he said, just focus on pedaling it right, and then you'll get the effect that I intended to get it. Never lift your pedal until there's it. And it at one point, I think it shifts to another chord. And until that point, I'm supposed to be pedaling on the same note. That's what he told me.
Fascinating.
It's absolutely fascinating, right? And then he also explained to me how he wrote certain songs like Poongadave Taalthiravai, where the intention behind hiding certain notes, like it sounds like Gambiranata at start, and then the Da and Re comes in to make it Maya Malavakoli specifically. And I asked him questions like, what would have been the intent behind somebody like MSV, because he has known MSV for many years, right? So in fact, I asked him about Neepadi Nanpadi, where the opening of this one. So you see this is based on, this starts with Valaji. That's the scale it starts with. Then so it goes to so he introduces two notes there, and then he goes to Nipa. It goes to a completely different chord. It goes to A major from E major. So I asked him, it's okay. I mean, I've seen composers strategize going from one route to the other, but how did it occur to you that you had to hide two notes, give an impression of Valaji, and then go into a Chakravaham? So how did this occur to you? I just asked him, and because I have always been fascinated about this side to you, and how did it occur to you that you came up with this? And he told me that, no, this is something that composers do a lot. I've known MSV sir does this a lot. So, and he told me about his song, the Poongadave Taalthiravai, where Poongadave Taalthiravai Poovagin Pavai na 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 na. So you see there, other than this Da, there is this note never comes. You never hear this note. So that is hidden. That's where it makes an entry. And of course it comes. So all the BGMs. So all the BGMs, the Re gets so much of importance, because in the Pallavi it's missing. So he spoke about how he highlights certain notes, heightens the importance to certain notes in the same raga in different parts of the same song. So the emotion constantly shifts through the song, even if it's based on the same raga. So alternate the importance given to the Vad and the Samvad, and through the song you do that, and it heightens certain emotions in one place and another emotion in another place. So these are stuff I learned from Raja sir, just by that. I think I interacted with him for 1 hour, 1 to 1.5 hours, but I just made use of the opportunity full time to pick his brain from little I could at that given time.
That would be the best 1 hour of any musician's life, period.
It's probably the best 1 hour of my life. I can tell you right away that probably defined what I did for the next few years with my music, like how I thought about music. I wouldn't say I did something fascinating like Raja sir did, but that was, at least my thoughts were based on that premise of as to how to treat a raga, how to care for a raga in a song. So if you can take a raga, you can treat it in different ways. You can flatten the notes, make it into a scale for the BGMs. You can embellish it more gamakas in the ornamentations in the Pallavi Charanam. You can heighten different notes at different places to bring about certain qualities. So this is not even getting into Graha Betams and Shruti Betams and all those other things that he's capable of doing, and he has done. But this is just taking a raga just as is, something as seemingly simple as Maya Malavakavali, and just play around, toss it around. Just in fact, that's probably one of the reasons why there are so many Maya Malavakavali ragam based songs of Raja sir, each one being completely different from the other, because the way it's treated is unique, right? So each song sounds different because he has treated the same raga differently in different songs. So that's something I started observing and taking into consideration in my own music in whatever little way I could.
You know what? Now that you say this, I think I'm going to listen to one of your songs in particular, Sindhuvairavi Dillana, in a completely different light. Because I have a feeling that the concept that you're talking about right here, the concept of emphasizing certain notes in certain moments, especially in a ragam like Sindhuvairavi, really comes through in that song. So
it probably does, but this was composed before I met Raja sir. This was written in 2008.
Never mind.
That was done in 2008. I met Raja sir in 2010.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, but
my bad.
But I think even I haven't noticed it, but probably some of those elements do come through in the Tillana. But speaking of the Tillana, it's based on the number 3. Speaks of the 3 sides of Shiva, right? So the Rudra and the protector, destroyer, and creator. So everything is Shiva, right? So basically it's based on that. So it has a Vakita, Takita, Takita, Takita meter to it, and the whole composition is placed in such a way that it alternates between, especially in the Swaram part, it alternates between Swaram, Jati, and lyric. And it just has different names of Shiva, that's all. That's all the lyric there is in the Swaram portion. So that is how much I knew at that point, and I just based a composition on that.
Interesting. No, it's just one particular line that stands out to me. It's the Nirigama, where you bring the Matu in there. And just...
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the first time I was listening to that song many years ago. 6-7 years ago, something like that, when I was like 13 or something, or 12 or even younger. And that line came, I was just like, whoa, where did that come from?
Actually, I should probably credit the influence of such kind of usage of Sindhuvairavi to Rajesh Vaidya sir, because I've played with Rajesh Anna for many years, because we used to speak like about Sindhuvairavi, like you can do so many infinite number of things with Sindhuvairavi, and he will say Sindhuvairavi Vasiklamada, he'll say, and we'll just go crazy on that raga. So we have done this umpteen number of times on stage. So I thought, okay, why not do something in Sindhuvairavi? It just came out of that. So it's like, you know somebody really well, you like to call him for dinner, right? It's just like that. So I thought I knew Sindhuvairavi a little better than some of the other ragas, so I thought I might just treat it in a different way and explore it my own way. But if I were asked to do it today, probably I would do it a little different. But those are different Navneeths at different ages. So,
if I may ask, in what sense?
In what sense? Probably those days I was very melody driven, and my chords were based out of highlighting different notes in the melody. So I wasn't too focused on this 2/5. I didn't even know what a 2/5 was at that point. I'll just go wild on my chords. So this time I would structure it a little better to make it a little bit easier for orchestras to play. I think I don't think I had that ability in 2008. if you would ask me to write a score, I would write it wild. That sometimes I only knew the different ranges of instruments, but I didn't know what was playable and what was not playable, and what would be enjoyable for a musician to play, so that his energy comes out into the song. I wasn't aware of that side of how to bring the best out of a musician into a song, like how to make the guitar part so fascinating for the guitarist that his character comes into the song. I couldn't do that at that point, but it is something I acquired later when I started playing with a lot of bands. So probably that is the difference, probably what I would say. So that's why I would arrange it a little differently. Even if I wrote the same melody, I would arrange it a little differently today.
I see. Yeah, so something that you mentioned there interests me because, you were talking about how you weren't aware of how certain instruments worked, or not necessarily how they worked, but what sort of lines would work best for a certain instrument. And that's honestly something that I struggle with a lot. I struggle with arranging parts for instruments that I don't play, or at least I'm not familiar with. So how do you think you've kind of improved in that sense over the years? How do you learn an instrument without necessarily playing it yourself?
Programming it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's the honest answer, because I learnt about Mridangam after I was required to program the Mridangam somewhere, and I've produced so many songs that eventually you understand. Okay, so you get opportunities. For me, every programming opportunity is a new opportunity to learn about a new instrument. So if somebody asks me to do a Mridangam, I'll go listen to Mridangam and din. If I had to do this, then I know din. So I can't do it like a tabla tum. So tum. So I only have two on my left. So I'll know how to I know how his hands can move today. So I wouldn't know that day.
Mm.
Although I would probably do a decent job that day, where I would just do it by sound. These days I think I would probably do it a little bit more by knowing the instrument, how it has to be played, what is playable, what is not playable on the instrument. So I think the best way to learn instruments is to actually program it yourself and figure out if it sounds like that, if it sounds like this.
Interesting. So yeah, we were talking about Raja-sir earlier on, and I want to shift the conversation from one legend to another, whom you've had the opportunity to work with as well, and of course that's Rahman-sir. And one of your experiences that you've talked about with him really interested me as well, and that's how sometimes if he had something to discuss about music technology, he would sometimes rope you in those discussions, and you'd have email conversations about music technology, if I'm correct. So I'm just curious to know, what sort of technologies would he kind of discuss with you about? Was it like new instruments or new plugins, or what sort of conversations would you have with them?
Anything tech. So mostly it was about new plugins, and I remember once Rahman sir spoke to me about GeoShred. It had this machine gun effect at that one point, where you know what machine gun effect is, right?
No.
So if I play a note like this, so each note sounds different. But if it was just a sample, it will sound like the same sound.
Right.
With not much variation in it, no natural variation. That's machine gun effect. So something that you would get on a very basic sequencer. So he said when I kept on playing the same note again, it had a machine gun effect to it. So he wanted me to discuss it with Mr. Jordan Rhodes. I had gone to Mumbai to meet Mr. Rhodes during his concert. So he had he woke me up in the morning. I'm in Mumbai, would you like to come and see me? And I said, I'm coming straight away. And I did not think twice. I didn't pack my bags. I just left to Mumbai. So I don't know how Rahman sir knew it, but he just messaged me and saying, can you please tell Mr. Roots that GeoShred has machine gun effect. But the problem was I didn't actually tell him that, and he actually emailed me a week later saying, Navneeth Sundar, I asked you to tell him this. Why didn't you tell him this? So basically disobeyed. So it wasn't exactly the coolest thing with Rahman sir. I didn't really live up to what he thought about me in that email. He wanted me to communicate something to Jordan, but I didn't do that. But anyway, most of our interactions are via email. So I've never met him personally much. I think the only one occasion I actually interacted with him in person was at one Z TV something where I played the piano and a little bit of iPad. He was the chief guest there, and I just played. Some kids from Saregamapa, they sang, and I played the piano in front of him. And I also played a little bit of Animoog. It was, I think, back in the days, GeoShred wasn't. I mean, at least I wasn't into GeoShred that much. I was just starting into GeoShred, but I was more confident with Animoog, and I played Animoog in front of him. In fact, Animoog was what he saw me play first. So, and which he tweeted about. So,
Right.
so he was, Suhasini was the host. I remember he telling him, see, he's going to play on the iPad, and I played. So that was pretty much, it's a very short interaction with him. Other than that, pretty much everything with him was over email discussions and stuff like that. So I never really actually worked with him live. I've never played for him live. But recently I played for his Malayalam film Malayan Kunj, where I played. He asked his proteges to send me one small bit for his background score, and I played it and sent it to him.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it was on my sound called Illayaraja, which I created a sound called Illayaraja, which is based out of two different amps, GeoShred and Bias FX. So using the acoustic simulation technology. So I created a sound which sounds bright. I mean, it's not physically possible to create an instrument like that. It just exists inside the iPad, but it has a very acoustic quality to it. So it's that instrument which I just played that BGM on. I was told it got approved, and it's there in the film. Somewhere in the first few minutes you should be hearing it. I don't know. I didn't watch the film, so I don't know where exactly it is. But this is what my interaction with Rahman sir has been. And he has sometimes there are a lot of new enthusiasts, like keyboard technology creators, like people who use MIDI 2.0 technology, like new MP controllers. A lot of people who develop them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them went to meet Rahman sir, and he has directed a lot of those people to me, so that we can work together on some collaborations or create something innovative on how to use that particular gadget. So these were the kind of stuff that we generally discussed and did. It's all mostly tech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of the iPad, let's get into that, because that's a huge part of your musical identity. And I heard that, when you first kind of started exploring with the iPad, you spent over like 2 or 3 lakh rupees on applications. Stuff like Animoog and GeoShed and applications like that. But when you were kind of exploring with all these different apps, were there specific kind of sounds that you were looking for, or was it just pure curiosity?
Yeah, I used to listen to some Carnatic keyboard material, so I was intrigued by this unique sound of it. So with Animoog, I must say I tried to get that waveform. I won't say playability, but the waveform, the sound of it. So with Animoog, I tried to lock into that like square, triangle-ish kind of sound. Jazz guitar has that. The jazz guitar sound on the keyboard, not the real jazz guitar, the jazz guitar sound that a lot of Carnatic musicians use on the keyboard, that had a very square, triangle kind of a character to it. So I tried to arrive there using synth. So I tweaked some parameters and then got to something what I liked on Animoog, and I stuck to that for a while. But with GeoShred, when I started playing with GeoShred, I was intrigued by the guitar sound of it, to be honest. And I'm still working on the guitar, man. I must tell you, the guitar sound of GeoShred, although they're now into violin, viola, cello, so many stuff. They're into physical modeling of. They've got the Nada sounds now, designed by Sutambara. They have done so much there, but the original guitar, right? I'm still working on it. I'm still getting sounds out of it. It's such an incredible app. So I was so fascinated by the guitar. I'm still stuck with the guitar. The Illayaraja is based out of the guitar sound. So I'm still stuck there. I'm still, oh my god, so many things I can do. I can play, I can even create something that sounds like an EP, an electric piano out of the guitar. And I've been exploring how to play backing, like how to play chords on the guitar, stuff like that. So I taught some of my students in the middle during the lockdown I used to teach. So I even taught some of my students to play chords on the guitar, how to play like jazz chords and stuff like that on GeoShred. So like it's fun, man. GeoShred has given me a lot of life in playing the iPad. So it's just kept me intrigued.
Interesting. So with all of the kind of possibilities on the what's the extent of what you can do with the GeoShred? Because I'm like, to be honest, I'm not too familiar with the app, and like I have no idea that you could, you know, play like guitar chords on there and things like that. What sort of possibilities are there within the application?
At the moment, I think from where I see GeoShred, there are a lot of you can pretty much work with any physically modeled sound. Like now it's got wind instruments in it, physically modeled wind instruments. So any physically modeled instrument. So the expansion of GeoShred is based on how much physical modeling itself can do. And actually, technically speaking, there is no limit. There is no technical limit to what physical modeling technology can do. Because if I had to create a piano the size of the Earth, I wouldn't be able to do it. But if I did somewhere in some planet X, in an atmosphere of let's say neon, right, and at a temperature of 235 Kelvin, what would the sound be like if I played it with 800-kilometer long hands? I think it's possible to compute what that would sound like.
Interesting.
Using physics.
Wow.
So there is no limit to what physical modeling can do. So that's what I told you at the very beginning of this interview, that I told you I live in a world of pink elephants and unicorns. So this is where I see physical, and I think I can put it this way: things that are capable of generating a pink elephant for me are coming after me. Right? See, these are technologies that can actually generate these, right? Now what I told you, a 600 kilometers long piano is like a pink elephant.
Wait.
Literally the elephant in the room, the elephant in the planet.
True.
Yeah. So GeoShred is a great medium to explore it notes wise, because there is a feature where I can even play microtonal melodies. So I can express scents there. In fact, on my sarangi sound, I would like to just do that quick demonstration. It is possible to stop on the sarangi.
Please.
On the sarangi, before this Nada sarangi came out, I had an original sarangi sound where it is actually possible to stop on a microtonal note, like on a sarangi. On a sarangi, there are no frets. On a guitar, there are frets. So it's actually not possible to stop on a microtonal note, unless the original note itself is tuned to a microtonal notation. So every note will be in microtonal, or the whole intonation is screwed up. Otherwise, it's not possible to land on a microtonal note on a guitar. I'm running the beta here where the sound doesn't exist. So I'll just look for it. Just give me 1 minute. I'll locate it. Okay. I can demonstrate that there used to be a button here on the sound, but I don't see this here. But this is the sarangi I have on my beta. I'm going to work with this now. So if I just turn off the round and snap, right? With this round and snap, the glides sound like this. But without with the round and snap disabled, that's sharp. See, this is D. I'm off D, not by an entire, but I'm off a little bit, so it doesn't snap.
Wait.
This can be done on any patch. You just turn off round and snap, and you can go anywhere on the spectrum, depending on the resolution of GeoShred, of course. But I don't think you need to resolve to such a detail that it matters. Beyond a point, it's not going to matter. It's all microtones. Like within 1 or 2 cents, it's not going to make a big difference. But it's possible to land on that particular within the range at least. So it's possible to play microtonally. It only depends on how good a player you are. So there is no limit on becoming a great player on GeoShred. So you can just keep getting better and better and better and better and better. So that's what I'm focusing on right now. So how to become better as a player on GeoShred, how to explore different possibilities of the instrument, and it has always fascinated me.
Wow. So I guess we have an exclusive announcement here. Navneeth Sundar's next composition is going to be in D half sharp. No, I'm just joking.
Could be.
But no, I mean, back to serious topics. But when you started off with the iPad, you started off with a very kind of Carnatic focus, and you were playing like ragams and things like that. Has that evolved over the years?
It has completely gone off the charts because I'm right now focused on playing backing instruments. I can just show you a quick demo. I don't know if I have a sound, but I can quickly. But it will take only minutes to create one. This is I don't have that instrument here, but you know what? I'm going to create that instrument. I'm going to create that one in front of you right now anyway. So I'm just going to new. I'm creating a new sound here. Okay, I just named it new. I'm just going to pick up a double coil bridge, and I'm going to set it to D major. Yeah, D major. Yeah, this is D major, and 6 strings. That's fine. Frets, I think I'm on 11 inch, so I'll make it 16. I can even okay, let's make it diatonic. So if it's diatonic, 16 would be inconvenient. I'll put it on 12. Let's play.
It looks like a harpeggi the way you're playing it.
Yeah, so I can play these very cool added chords. Play 13s. Yeah, it's a 13. So it's a very nice way of looking at GeoShred. I don't think people are focused on playing. This is great. This is so many people. This is the strength of so many people. But there is also this side. Now, if I just quickly add a chorus here. So I'm just doing this on the fly, right? So I don't have this patch. I'm just showing how easy it is. I make up some gain here. So I make it louder. I'm going to add a nice chorus. A stick chorus. So this distorts a little bit. I'm going to reduce the volume. Yeah, that's fine. And I'm adding some delay. What delay? Multi-tap echo. Yeah. Now there are 4 echoes. They bring down all their levels. I'm just going to have 1 echo. Just for the moment. So just 1 echo. Too much feedback. Bring down feedback. I think that's fine. Tone is okay. I'm going to add a reverb to it. So I'm wasting time looking for the instrument. Because there's a glare on my iPad from this light. Otherwise, I think
it's fascinating kind of seeing you go through the process.
Yeah. So, okay, reverb. Now we are set. It's a little loud. Bring down the makeup gain. If I put this on glide, I can do something really cool. So you can do this on any other instrument, right?
Wow!
Yeah, so, and how long did this take me? Like 1.5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's extremely cool.
You can have a whole band just on iPads.
Yeah, and right now I'm not, if I turn off this diatonic mode, I can even go into chords like outside the scale. Like
Wait.
For example, then I can do so the cool things I can actually do on this. So there's actually no limit to what you can do on GeoShred, man. This is the reason I'm really fascinated with this instrument. And if I actually dial in some whammy here, I can play it like a mandolin. So it's actually, you know why I'm excited about this instrument, right? And there is a parameter called stiffness. So so when I adjust this stiffness somehow, if I get this stiffness into the y-axis of my playing, I just have to add this parameter called stiffness. How do I do that? Performance, where is it? Per string stiffness, yes. And I just set a range to it, like say small range, so it doesn't go out of charts. I think I'm good to go. Get a nice string noise. You hear that?
That's perfect for like Carnatic.
Yeah, so this is how I design those acoustic instruments. And then if I had some acoustic modeling behind it, then this becomes this becomes the Elavina. That's all.
Yeah, so just on the note of the iPad, right? This is a kind of, maybe a very kind of lazy complaint that some people make, but I kind of just want to throw it at you. But people are always concerned when technology develops that it'll take over humans, right? So when GeoShred comes about and you can play this beautiful guitar tone, all the guitarists are going to lose their jobs, and all the Vina players are going to lose their jobs. But I'm aware that you're not a believer in that, and you believe that they complement each other really well. So could you talk me through kind of where you see this developing in like a complementary fashion, or do you think it could ever substitute humans?
As long as it takes a human to play GeoShred, it's not ever going to substitute humans. I'm made of flesh and blood. I'm not made of silicon. I'm made of carbon atoms. I don't have silicon in my body. So I think I'm perfectly human, and I'm just joking, man. It's basically, as long as it takes a human to play GeoShred, it's not going to. At least GeoShred is not going to take over any other instrument. In fact, it's going to extend the range of what a flute can do or what a sound can do. Right? It's going to alter the way how a flute could sound. It could alter the range of how a flute can be played. At least a flute sound, right? How it can shift sounds. So it's like I create a physically modeled piano, right? Let's think of it this way. I create a 600 mile wide piano. Okay, let's go there. Let's go to the 600 mile wide piano. And I throw it around. I try to lift it with a toothpick, and it just punctures the piano. Okay? Or let's not even take a toothpick. Let's look at something wilder. I call my 2-year-old niece. I ask her to pull a string, and she somehow sums up the courage to pull the string. And I keep hitting a key that corresponds to the string. That'll be a bend, right?
Yeah.
Right. So this is an imagination. It's not possible that my 2-year-old niece is going to pull the string of a 600 mile wide piano. So, but I can do the glide on GeoShred. If I manage to physically model a 600 mile wide piano, somehow get that module connected to GeoShred here, and I do the string glide, I can actually get that sound, right? So how can you physically produce the sound? So it actually extends. It makes it. It's like a lever. Can you lift a 1,000 kilogram object from a well using just your hands? You can't. If you use 100 pulleys, probably you could. So these are just like pulleys aiding curious minds like me to just keep trying out different stuff. Art and music are just byproducts of curiosity, man. That's what I believe in. The more curious you are, the more byproducts are going to come out. Those byproducts are the musical creations that people consume.
Wow. Yeah, I've never thought of it that way, as like extensions of existing instruments. There was actually a video of you that I saw. This doesn't necessarily relate to the iPad specifically, but you were using some device. I don't know what it was, but it was basically a bass session. And you were adjusting some settings in some way to create like a kind of dubstep bass line out of like a physical bass guitar.
Oh yeah, it was for my film Ticket.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I was having a filter. I told the guy to to glide his note on the chord, so the player would just go to the note and he would move in a way where he wanted to go. So if he had to play dum ba-bum, I told dum dum, I just asked him to go do that.
Uh-huh.
And all he did was just so that the note just get cut. So that was the idea. So I played around with the filters, with how I could do triplets time. So I was doing that using just filters on my finger. There's nothing high tech there, just low tech. One low tech way of generating dubstep. That's all.
I mean, but it's the same concept. It's using forms of technology to extend the barriers of physical instruments.
Yeah, the concept. Yeah, that's the concept. Yes.
Right. Yeah, that because I mean, I'm no music tech, connoisseur or anything like that. So yeah, even small things like that, I find really fascinating.
It's about not leaving any stones unturned. Okay. See, let's think of it this way. There are, to my, I would say dislike. I wouldn't say, I don't really like the fact that trends change so quickly in the music industry. Okay. Like when a new genre comes up, there is so much left to do in that particular genre, right? Like if Illayaraja was a genre, Illayaraja has so much more to offer, man. Right? He has so much more to do. And it probably doesn't take the lifetime of Illayaraja himself to come up with Illayaraja-ness. Right?
Yeah.
So, but unfortunately these days a genre a trend doesn't stay too long. So if there is a pop, let's say a retro pop stayed, and then something else took over, disco took over, something else took over, right? Like there have been a sequence of genre shifts. Like you will leave something and just go to the other, man. That's too bad. Right? So I believe while you're there, don't leave anything unturned. Don't leave stones unturned. That's something I hate. So touch upon everything as much as you can. Create as many possibilities. Create as many as you can while this lives. I do not know how long the iPad is going to be relevant here. In my lifetime, you might get a gadget that's playable on air in 2025. I do not know. Right? So where would this Illavina and all these technologies fit in 2025? We do not know. So to answer the question, what about the future? Future keeps on shaping us. Maybe I might come up with something at that point to do something on in the air or something, if at all the technology comes up.
Right.
But this creation will never go out of my heart. And I want to do as much with it in whatever time it lives on. Right? So if at all there is something that has stung me over the years, from the time I was born till my life today in music, it's the fact that music genres go out of existence, or it is portrayed to go out of vogue. I don't believe in vogue, man. It doesn't exist in my world. Everything is relevant at every point in time after it's created. The Moog synthesizers have become relevant now because of the electronic era, but they shouldn't have gone out of place at any point, in my opinion. So a sound is a sound. A piece of art is a piece of art. It doesn't matter if my grandson doesn't like it. It's still a piece of art. It's still a piece of marvel, right? So I want to make the art of music making, the sound, the technology of it, the sound of it, the relevance of it, timeless. So that's my dream. I don't know if a lifetime is enough to achieve that, but at least I'll give it my best shot in whatever way I can, in whatever fascination my mind can come up with, or I can throw the world. So as long as I'm intrigued about these things, I think this fascination of mine will continue, and that probably defines who I am and why I do what I do.
Do you think the kind of commercial obligations that you have, for example, if you're working as a music director in a film, there are certain commercial obligations that you have to stick by. Do you think that has stifled your creativity? Because, as you say, trends change really quickly, and, when you're doing work for somebody else, you might be forced to keep up with those trends, right? So do you think it's worked against you in that sense?
It hasn't worked against me. I have seen it work against music itself, evolution of music itself. Like, why do trends keep changing based on the listener? Why can't it be based on, let's say, I mean, maybe I'm living in an ideal world where pink elephants exist, but I think it should be based on how the genre itself gets exhausted over a period of time. See, these days, we don't live in an era where genres are defined by musical expert or musical, I won't say expertise, what's the right word? Musical terms. Like, a dubstep is not based out of a certain scale, or a dubstep is not based out of they are all sound based genres, right?
Yeah.
So they're all sound based. So it is easier to explore sound in a certain, within a given period of time, than explore music. So where it has actually probably gone wrong is the fact that before we should have written, before a million songs are created in a particular genre, and one act, and until it's actually done to death, we saw musical trends changing over a period of time, right? So why should a classical progression go, or a classical chord progression go out of vogue suddenly? Why should we stop having 8 chords in a bar all of a sudden? That wasn't required, right? Why did we have to go to 3 chords, 4 chords? Why did it start to fascinate? It was a cultural thing, and somehow this actually, while I still continue to wonder over this point, I do get the answer inside me that at the end of the day, music is for people and it's for consumption. So everything in this universe works for the consumer.
Right.
Like, the air exists because the air will exist as long as we consume it, right? So, or at least we would like to think of it that way. So it's maybe that it's the nature itself is spawning these things for us, or maybe it's also the fact that if the million we are kept wondering about the million other possibilities that could have been if that particular sound or the particular genre had not gone away. We'll never know an answer to that, but I'll keep wondering.
Yeah, so something that interests me in what you just said, you talk about how, things used to be more music based and now it's more sound based. Where do you draw the line between music and sound?
Where do we draw the line? It's a very interesting question. I think we shouldn't draw lines, man. The lines shouldn't exist. Why can't I have an absolutely cool progression that you would hear only on bebop, okay, on trap? There is no real reason why you shouldn't have that. In fact, I am a huge fan of marrying musical styles with sound styles. In fact, that's what people have done over the ages. What I don't like is the fact that so many traps or dubsteps or all these wonderful sound-based genres are crowded with songs that have 3 chords or 4 chords. I think all these explorations should come into vogue somehow, and we should have a lot of marriage between sound-based genres and notation-based or theory-based genres. Let me put it that way: music theory-based genres. So, if that happens enough number of times, I think probably we will see a lot more exploration in both sides of music, which is sound and the theory.
Interesting. That reminds me of something you've said that doesn't necessarily correlate directly to our conversation right now, but it kind of relates because I'm a Tamil that lives in Japan. So, I've had like 2 very distinct musical backgrounds, and I think that's best represented in the 2 cultures' interpretations of the word fusion. So in Chennai, if you say fusion, people think playing nagumomo with an electric guitar. Right? I think that's the image that pops up. And in Japan, if you say fusion, people think jazz fusion. Right? So people think like jazz and rock together. But you mentioned, although it may seem obvious, that fusion is just simply the amalgamation of multiple genres. And I think that sometimes gets lost because each culture has its own bias towards what fusion means in those respective cultures. So what you're saying right now about connecting music and sound, or music-based genres and sound-based genres, that's an evolution of fusion that, like, I think your mind is really open to, but sometimes maybe in certain cultures, because they have a restricted definition of what fusion means, it's kind of closed off a little bit, if that makes any sense.
I think it's all deadlines, man, because because here typically we musicians in this my colleagues, we all meet we discuss a lot of these things, but at the end of the day we are able to get together only for rehearsing for a particular gig. So we'll have 2 days for a gig, we'll sit today and what do we do for that particular gig. Okay, how can we put Nagumum together? We'll do, okay, you're a guitarist, you play these chords, I'll just arrange the chords, you play it. We go back to the same thing, we just change the chords around, and there are not too much. So with this particular sound, you don't get to craft something in such a short time, right? So it takes a lot out of every single musician to collaborate and do stuff, because there's so much work happening around, and we all have to meet this deadline. We have to be there at that particular time. I think somewhere we have to find that balance and just give up on certain things, maybe certain comfort. Maybe I will sacrifice this 20,000 rupees for today, and I will sit and explore this particular ragam, how else I can approach it harmonically. Things like that, right? It takes a lot out of you, man. The consistency at which you can do these things. I think it comes down to that. Somewhere I think we humans need assistance with that. Maybe bots could help.
Wonderful. So we've kind of gone off on a tangent about music philosophy and, the future of music and all that, but this podcast is about you, so let's get back to you.
This is me. This is all about me.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, in a sense, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, just kind of coming onto your work as a musician and as a music director and things like that. Your first kind of full-fledged debut album in the film scene was Buddy, if I'm correct. And something that really fascinated me that you've talked about with regards to working on this project was that you stayed in Cochin for 4 months prior or during working on this film in order to kind of internalize the Malayali culture and in order to understand the kind of musical inclinations that people there had. Well, I guess part one is how kind of different was it to what you expected? And part two is how do you think being in that environment affected your musical output?
I would say I learned something very interesting, where Malayalam as a language, for the main difference between Tamil and Malayalam is the fact that when you say a word in Malayalam, it already has a tune to it. I can't change it. You get it? It's like Cantonese. Cantonese, when they say ma, it's something else. It's ma, it's something else, right? So,
yeah.
So it's exactly like that. So I mean, it's not that the same word has different intonations. Cantonese is an extreme version of it. But in Malayalam, if I want to say yada para, I can say yada para there. It will not work, right? So that aspect, even in Tamil, it's a little similar, but it doesn't have a defined tune.
Right.
If I have Ade Sollida, I just have to. It's a very random thing. I can do.
Yeah.
I can. Ade Sollida. I can do that, right? But if it's Yada Para, okay, in Malayalam, it's Yada Para. So I can do Yada Para. That's all I can do. So I have to match the intonation of the language itself. So it's that effect is very strong in Malayalam. So if I deviate from that, then Malayali composers naturally do that. Tamil composers, we are so used to Tamil that we don't understand it that well. So it is that I got used to how they speak in Cochin, how they interact, how they speak a certain sentence. So when I receive the lyrics, I ask my ADs to just recite it. So I'll get the intonation of it. The way it's, if they say kadalil kan mashi pole, kadalil kan mashi pole. So kadalil, she has to go up. Kadalil can't be up to down. So stuff like that. So these are the stuff I understood. So okay, then let's put it into practice. And the other thing I realized was I can't do something like it's very difficult to write Malayalam singles for single syllables. So other than nyan and ni, everything is at least 2 to 3 syllables. For example, if I say Vanam in Tamil, in Malayalam it's 3 syllables. Akasham. So I can do Vanam. I can do that in Malayalam. Akasham. It has to be 3 syllables. So on average, every Malayalam word that I take into account when I do a meter has to have a 2 to 3 syllables average more than single syllable words. So it will not sound good when I use single syllable words in Malayalam. These are lessons I learnt when I started composing in Malayalam. So it was very unique experience. So these are these are the stuff I picked up while I was in Kerala.
So like you brought up like kadalil kanmashi pole, for example, right? And how the word like kadalil it goes up as you when you say it.
Kadalil kanmashi pole. That's how they've said it.
Right. So did you ever have to like, for example, if you compose the tune as kadalil kanmashi pole or something like that, that wouldn't work with the language because the tune's going down.
Not at the tempo. It should have been something like let's do an alternative. Let's make it slow. Kadalil, yes, that tempo. Kadalil kanmashi pole. So if it's slow, then the musical aspect of it takes over. That's why probably a lot of Malayalam songs are slow. Because if it's done at the pace at which they talk, then it has to match with the intonation at which they speak. And they all speak it with such strong... it's a defining characteristic of Malayalam. The accent, the intonation of the language. It's so beautiful. And that's such a defining characteristic of that language. That's why they say Kavin Malayalam. Like they say Sundara Telugu, right? Like that they say Kavin Malayalam.
Mm-hmm.
So Kavin Malayalam means it's like a poem. The language itself is like a poem. So it has an intonation.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so it has a beautiful. So what is the difference between prose and poetry? Poetry has intonation, right?
Yeah.
You speak Malayalam, even if he scolds you, it's going to sound poetic. That's what it means. So that's such a beautiful language, and that's a lot I learned from Kerala being there, and I had to internalize those words just talking to cab drivers. and I had that opportunity more often because I was gigging at that point. So I used to take flights up, down so often that I would do this travel from airport to my home in Panampalli Nagar so often. Like every week I used to take 2 flights at least back and forth. So I used to talk with the cab drivers and observe how they spoke. All of these things added up and they all made a difference.
Very interesting. I've never heard anyone talk about this aspect of language and how it interacts with music. And actually, again, it may influence the way I look at, for example, like Kadil Kanmashi Pole, right? You talk about how like the words go upwards at that tempo.
Yeah.
But the way the percussion works in the song, it kind of goes downwards.
Yeah.
Because it's snare and then the kick.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that up and down motion working against, not working against, working with each other. It's contrary motion.
Yep. In fact, if you swap the kick with the snare, see, it's a tak, tum, tum, tak. It's snare, kick, snare, kick, right? So, ta, ta, tick, ta, ta. It's actually ting, ta, tick. It's more reggaeton.
Yeah, exactly.
You reverse it. Right? Tak, tum, tum. You tak, tum, tak, tum. You put too many snares, it becomes uninteresting. So, tak, tum, tum, tak, tum. And then, this bass line.
Yeah.
That would be like, for example, it's Latin. So it's a Latin kind of a bass line. So the whole song has it. one, that pulse to it. So that's like salsa. That's salsa. That's mambo. It's Afro-Cuban music. So that's where that idea was born of. So that's exactly what I talk about, marrying different genres, man. It can be subtle. It doesn't have to be loud. This bass line is what defines what Afro-Cuban music sounds like, or at least one of the things that define an Afro-Cuban music. Other than
for sure.
the clave and everything is there, but there's also this bass line that defines what Afro-Cuban music, and I wanted it to define this song, and I went with the kick goes with that, tak tung tung tak tung tung goes with it. And how do we get that? By swapping
it gives it a kind of 808 effect.
By swapping the reggaeton with the kick, you throw out the kick, the swap kick with the snare, you get this pattern. So that's how we arrive at this rhythm. So change things around, man. Just it's about. I think we artists should get wilder. So it's about these experiments that I really like to do. So that's how the groove was born for this song.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go on for hours. There's probably like so many of these kind of.
Let me check my charge now. I think I am at 9%. Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll start to wrap things up then. But one thing I wanted to talk about before we finished. We're in 2022, and one of the kind of big events for you this year was the Chess Olympiad.
Yeah.
And you doing the background score for the Civilization Act.
And the finale.
Yeah. And I heard that you finished the whole score in 2 days, basically. How?
Yeah, physically. I gave the full composition with all the live instruments recorded in 48 hours.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So what I heard is that basically Vignesh Shivan sir told you the kind of general idea via phone call, if I'm correct. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's correct.
You got the whole picture within that one phone call, and you just busted everything out in 48 hours.
After that call, I think 5 of us met in my studio. Vicky wasn't there. One of his ADs was, and one of the choreographers, Raymond, he was there. So I got the picture from Vignesh that, okay, these are the sequence of it, these are the events that are going to happen. Until that point, I had no idea that, okay, there was going to be a choreographed Silapadikaram act happening, a choreographed Sakiyar Kooth happening. So there was the scriptwriter Mukundan with me, there was one of the ADs Vardhini with me, Ragini, the event manager, my best friend, she was there, Raymond, the choreographer, one of the choreographers, he was there, and we were just discussing on, okay, this is the event order. So Vardhini told me, okay, this can follow this can follow this, there will be a voiceover here, then this act will come. Then it took me an hour to know the sequence of events. And then Raymond told me, okay, how long should this dance last? And he told me, okay, probably for half a minute, 45 seconds, and I'll just make notes there. I just noted it 40 seconds, this Bharatanatyam 1 minute, Sakiyar Kooth 40 seconds. I just made notes. And then I asked who's going to do the voiceover. They said Kamal. And you won't believe what I did next. I watched Mahanadi, and I saw how Kamal Hassan spoke in that film. Okay? And then, you remember the Bharadiyar Kavita used to recite at the end?
Yeah.
நான் வீழ்வேன் என்று நினைத்தாயோ பல வேடிக்கை மனிதர்களை போல நான் வீழ்வேன் என்று நினைத்தாயோ. You remember the dialogue in that film? The end of Mahanadi. So I watched the climax a few times, and I saw at the pace at which he spoke, and I tried to replicate that pace in my voiceover. So I did the entire voiceover. I read the script out loud with like how I would impersonate Kamal sir. So I did and okay, I figured, okay, this takes about 20 seconds maybe this to speak this line. If I spoke it, I would do it in 12 seconds, but he speaks it so legibly and so slow that it takes 20 seconds. So he's very he has a certain he has a certain kind of a pronunciation pattern to. So I did the entire voiceover, and then I gave gaps for this, and I just scored the music. And I think the whole musical, putting this together took me more over a day. I think I did the entire music in 8 hours. And you know how I did it? Because I called my violin player over the phone. Be online. I'm going to give you some notes. call the flute player, be online, percussion player. I told him to go to the studio in the morning. I told him, be there. I'll be sending you grooves. Just play those grooves. I'll tell you the sound. Play them. Send it across to me. Send those waves across to me. And I'm here composing, sending them voice notes and swarams. Not even like produced. Just the swarams. And I'll have them play. I'll hear it. I'll audition it and say, no, I want a little bit more rise here. And stuff like that. So they sent me lots of bits, and I think only 30% of it I actually used in the score, because I had so many options. I created so many options for the score, and I probably used 30% of it in the actual Civilization Act. And everything else was like, I'll use it in the future some other time. So it's all there. So basically that's how we arrived at the music. And once I have all the recordings in place, then it's just about piecing them, and I just react. I'll just play strings, chords, brass, horns, and stuff like that. Those things I had envisioned. So that took me about 2 hours just to construct the whole bed around the played tracks. So the music was 100% original, played by artists I hired, and I played the chords and I arranged the chords, everything according to the sound. Boom, we have a track.
You make it sound so easy.
I mean, whether it becomes a hit or something else is up to the crowd, but this is one way of creating a track.
Yeah, so speaking about creating tracks, that's what you've been doing your whole life, but towards the future, what can we expect from you? What are the kind of projects or albums that you're working on right now?
I frankly have no idea, man. I just live every day by itself. So when somebody asks me what your future plan is, very honestly, I don't even know what I'm going to do tomorrow. I just have dates blocked in my calendar for this, that's all. And I just work my way through it. And in the process, as I always told you, music can only be a byproduct. So all the art that they create is just byproduct, man. Nothing else. So you never know when your byproduct comes out, right? So it's just like that.
You know what? I'm finding a lot of parallels between the way you speak about things and the way Abhay Jodhpurkar speaks about things. I had him on the podcast maybe, I think it's been 2 years. 2 years ago, I had him on the podcast. But he said he's like a really creative mind as well. The same type of person who would think about 600 mile wide pianos.
He's insane, man. I know him well. He's insane. You can talk with him for us. I can completely imagine what the conversation would have been like.
Yeah, and when I asked him, this is the kind of the future question I ask every guest. It's just kind of a staple. But he said, "I'll figure out the cure for the next coronavirus."
You know what? Musicians are crazy. We are a crazy species. You know, it takes a lot of craziness to continue doing music after a lot of things you see in your life, right? So.
Yeah.
We better be crazy, man. The world deserves a lot of craziness. There's a lot of monotony, a lot of metronomic activities in this world. Let it be a little crazy. We can do with some craziness.
Alright, so yeah, it's been an incredible conversation. I've never done a podcast recording quite like this.
I loved it, man. I loved it. I've never had fun interacting with anyone like this ever before.
Yeah, it's been absolutely incredible. And I usually end my podcasts with 2 questions. One I've just asked you about future plans. And the final question that I ask every guest is, what's on your playlist right now?
What's on my playlist? No, I was hearing some bhajan which I was hearing bhajans a little while ago because I'm heading for a concert in Puttaparthi, so I'm supposed to play some bhajans there. So I was listening to bhajans today. So that was what was on my playlist today. It could be something else tomorrow.
In line with what you've said, things change every day. It's been an absolutely incredible conversation with you. I had so much fun. I think we'll finish off there for the sake of the listeners' time and for your iPhone battery. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you to the listeners for tuning in. Of course, make sure to go and check out Navneeth's music and his social media. All of those links will be in the description below. Thank you very much for your time once again. Well, that was Navneeth Sundar on our 17th episode of the Indoencers Podcast. And thank you to everyone that has tuned in. You can find us at the Indoencers, spelled THEINDOENCERS, on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or you can use the links in the description. Likewise, you can find our homepage at theindoencers.wordpress.com or through the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the Indoencers Podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.